Welcome. Settle in where you are. Let your body soften into the surface beneath you. There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing to solve. Nothing to remember. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. It comes from the forests of old India, from a time when storytellers carried wisdom in their voices and wanderers sat beneath trees to listen. It's a gentle tale, a slow one. There is no rush in it. No danger, just rain and moonlight and the quiet breathing of the earth. You don't need to follow every word. You don't need to hold on to the details. Let the story move around you like water. Let it soften the edges of your thoughts. If you drift away, that's exactly right. If sleep finds you halfway through, let it come. This is a story about an elephant and the moon, about patience, about the way we see things that aren't really there, and about the kindness that comes when we finally stop searching. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let the night hold you. The story begins now. There was once a forest. Not the kind you might imagine bright and full of birdsong, but a forest older than memory, deep in the western hills where the monsoon comes heavy and the trees grow so thick the sunlight barely reaches the ground. The air there smells of wet bark and crushed leaves. The earth is soft, black soil that holds the shape of your foot long after you've passed. In this forest, there lived an elephant. His name was Gayendra, though no one had called him by it in years. He was old. So old his tusks had yellowed and cracked, and the skin along his back hung loose like cloth left too long in the rain. His eyes were clouded, pale at the edges, but still gentle, still kind. He walked alone, not because he wanted to, but because that is what happens when you grow old in the wild. The herd moves on. The young ones go where the grass is greener, where the rivers run fast and the mud is cool. And the old ones stay behind, in the places they know, moving slowly through the shadows, listening to the rain. Gayendra had been walking for days. He didn't know why. There was no destination, no plan, just a restlessness in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name. So he walked through the teak trees and the bamboo groves, over the roots that twisted like sleeping serpents, through the clearings where the ferns grew tall and the ground was soft with moss. The monsoon had just begun. The sky was low and gray, heavy with water that hadn't fallen yet. The air was thick. You could taste the rain before it came. And when it finally did come, it came all at once, a sudden roar, like the earth had opened its mouth and the sky had poured itself inside. Gajendra stood still and let the rain fall on him. It ran down his back in streams. It pooled in the hollows of his ears. It dripped from the end of his trunk and soaked into the ground beneath his feet. He closed his eyes. He breathed. And then he walked on. The forest at night is a different place. The rain softens. The thunder rolls away to the east, low and distant, like a drum being played in another village. The frogs begin to sing, the insects hum, and if you stand very still, you can hear the trees breathing the slow inhale of wind through leaves, the exhale of water dripping onto stone. Gajendra came to a clearing. It was small, a circle of open sky surrounded by tall sal trees, their trunks black with rain. In the center of the clearing was a pool, not large, just a low place where the water had gathered, smooth and dark as polished stone. And above the pool, the moon. It had just risen. A full moon, pale and luminous, floating in a gap between the clouds. Its light fell softly on the water, and there, reflected perfectly, was another moon, round and bright and impossibly still. Gajendra stopped. He had seen the moon before, of course, 1,000 times. But tonight, something about it held him. Maybe it was the way the reflection shimmered when the rain touched the surface. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was simply that he was old and tired and had nowhere else to go. He stepped closer. His feet sank into the mud at the edge of the pool. The water was cool. It lapped gently against his legs as he waded in, slow and careful, until he stood in the center, the moon's reflection floating just in front of him. He lowered his trunk. He thought, perhaps he could touch it, this glowing thing, this soft light that seemed so close, so real. But when his trunk broke the surface, the moon shattered. It split into 1,000 pieces, ripples spreading out in circles, the light scattering like silk torn apart. Gajendra pulled back. He waited, and slowly, the water settled. The moon returned. He tried again, this time more gently, just the tip of his trunk, barely brushing the surface. But again, the moon broke. Again, the light dissolved. He stood there for a long time, watching the water smooth itself, watching the moon return, whole and unblemished, as if it had never been touched at all. The rain began again just before dawn, soft at first, a whisper, then heavier, drumming on the leaves, filling the forest with sound. Gajendra stepped out of the pool. His legs were caked with mud. His body was cold, but he didn't leave the clearing. He stood beneath the sal trees and watched the sky lighten gray to pale gold to the color of wet ash. And as the light grew, he saw something he hadn't noticed in the dark. At the far edge of the clearing, half hidden in the undergrowth, was a shrine. It was old, older than the trees, perhaps. Just a small stone platform with a carved figure at the center, a deity whose face had been worn smooth by rain and time. Moss grew thick along the base. Vines curled around the edges. And at the foot of the shrine, someone had left an offering, a single marigold, bright orange, still fresh. Gajendra walked closer. He didn't know why. He wasn't a creature of temples or prayers, but something about the shrine drew him. Maybe the stillness of it, the way it sat so quietly in the forest, unbothered by the rain, by the years, by the forgetting. He stood before it, and as he stood there, he heard a voice. "You've been trying to catch the moon." Gajendra turned. Sitting on a low stone, half hidden beneath a banyan root, was a man. He was old, older even than Gajendra, perhaps. His skin was dark and deeply lined, his hair white and tied back in a knot. He wore a simple cloth wrapped around his waist and nothing else. His feet were bare. His hands rested on his knees. He smiled. "I saw you," the man said. "Last night, in the water." Gajendra didn't move. He wasn't afraid. There was no threat in the man's voice, only warmth, only quiet. The man stood slowly, his joints creaking. He walked to the edge of the pool and looked down at the water, now rippled by rain. "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "So close, so bright. You think maybe, if you reach just a little farther, you could hold it." He turned and looked at Gajendra. "But you can't." Gajendra's trunk swayed slightly. He understood. The man sat down on the wet ground, cross-legged, his back against the shrine. He patted the earth beside him, as if inviting the elephant to sit as well. Gajendra lowered himself slowly, his knees folded, his weight settled into the mud, and there they sat, the old man and the old elephant, side by side in the rain. "I was young once," the man said. His voice was soft, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "I lived in a village, not far from here. I had a wife, children, a field of rice that flooded every monsoon and dried out every summer. I worked, I prayed, I did what I was supposed to do." He paused, "but I was never satisfied." The rain fell steadily. The forest breathed around them. I thought there was something I was missing, the man continued. Some truth, some answer. So I left. I walked into the forest. I sat beneath trees. I fasted. I chanted. I looked for gods in the stones and the rivers and the sky. He smiled. And do you know what I found? Gajendra's ears flicked. Water ran down his face. Nothing, the man said. For years I found nothing. Just hunger, just cold, just the same restless mind I'd always had. He reached out and touched the ground, his fingers pressing into the wet earth. And then one day, I stopped looking. He looked up at the sky, at the clouds moving slowly overhead. I sat down. I watched the rain. I listened to the trees, and I realized there was never anything to find. It was always here, right here, in the falling, in the breathing, in the being. He turned to Gajendra. You can't catch the moon, he said gently. Because the moon isn't in the water, it's in the sky. And even if you could reach it, what would you do with it? Hold it? Keep it? He shook his head. The beauty isn't in the holding. It's in the seeing. They sat together until the rain stopped. The clouds thinned. The sky turned pale. And through the trees, the first light of morning came slanting down in long golden beams. The man stood. He bowed slightly to the shrine, then turned to Gajendra. You're tired, he said. I can see it. You've been walking a long time. Gajendra's eyes, clouded and old, met his. Rest, the man said. There's nowhere you need to go. And then, without another word, he walked into the forest. His footsteps were soft. Within moments, he was gone. Gajendra stayed in the clearing. He didn't leave that day, or the next, or the one after that. He drank from the pool. He ate the tender leaves that grew along the edges. He stood beneath the sal trees and watched the light change morning to midday to the long gold of evening. And every night, when the moon rose, he stood at the edge of the water and looked at it, not to catch it, just to see it, the way it floated, the way it rippled, the way it returned, again and again, no matter how many times the water moved. He didn't need to touch it anymore. He didn't need to hold it. He just watched. And in the watching, something in him softened. He was old. His body was tired. But his heart, for the first time in years, was still. One morning, the man returned. He didn't speak. He simply sat down beside the shrine, as he had before, and watched the forest wake. Gajendra came and stood beside him. They stayed that way for a long time. The man and the elephant, the clearing and the rain, the moon that would rise again when the sun went down. And somewhere, far away, the world kept turning. But here, in this small place, beneath the trees, there was only stillness, only breath, only the quiet knowing that nothing needed to be different than it was. The seasons changed. The monsoon gave way to autumn. The air grew cooler. The leaves began to fall, slow and golden, drifting down like thoughts that had finally been released. Gajendra grew slower. His legs trembled when he stood. His breath came shallow, but he was not afraid. The man visited often. Sometimes he brought fruit. Sometimes he sat in silence. Once, he brought a garland of jasmine and draped it gently over Gajendra's head. You've learned something, the man said one evening, as the light faded and the first stars appeared. Gajendra's trunk rested on the ground. His eyes were half closed. You've learned to let the moon be the moon. The man smiled. That's all any of us can do. One night, Gajendra did not wake. He lay beneath the sal trees, his great body still, his breath finally quiet. The moon rose above him, full and bright, casting silver light across the clearing. The man came at dawn. He stood beside Gajendra for a long time, his hand resting on the elephant's side. He didn't weep, he didn't speak. He simply stood there, honoring the life that had been, the stillness that had been found. And then he walked to the shrine. He placed a marigold at the base. He bowed, and he whispered a prayer not for Gajendra, but with him, a prayer of thanks, a prayer of release. The forest took Gajendra back slowly. The rains came, the vines grew, the earth softened and welcomed him home, and in time there was nothing left but bones, white and smooth, half buried in moss. But the clearing remained. The pool still reflected the moon. The shrine still stood, quiet and patient. And sometimes, when the night was very still and the rain had just stopped, you could almost feel it, a presence. Not a ghost, not a memory, just a knowing that the moon is always there, that the water always returns, and that we are all, in the end, exactly where we need to be. And so the story ends, not with answers, not with triumph, just with stillness, with the moon reflected in the water, with the quiet breathing of the forest. Let that stillness hold you now. Let your body rest. Let your thoughts drift. Let the night wrap itself around you like soft cloth. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to reach for. The moon is already there, the water is already still, and you, just as you are enough. Sleep now. Let the forest take you gently. Let the rain fall. Let the dream begin.